Swiss Watch Company, or SWC, is a relatively young microbrand with a catalog that is becoming more impressive with each release. Their latest releases include 2 great entries into the sport and field watch categories, but like most microbrands, they got their start with a dive watch. However, SWC took the road less traveled and opted not to go with the sub 40mm dive watch fad. The Mark II Diver is a 44mm dive watch. Before the craze for dive watches between 38 and 40mm, many dive watches were on the larger size. They needed to be easy to read in low light conditions and have enough case to withstand the water resistance ratings of 200 meters or more. With all that said, the Mark II Diver wears comfortably on the wrist and doesn't feel like its stated case width. This is kept in check with a 48mm lug-to-lug and a case thickness around 13mm. This gives the Mark II Diver wrist presence without feeling like a brick on your wrist. Because of the 44mm case width, the dial has some room to breathe and allows for the elements of the dial to stand out. One of the things that stands out the most on the Mark II Diver is the lume. The lume application is heavy, giving even Seiko a run for their money. The lume was applied so heavily that it often felt like the lume was glowing all the time, even in daylight. If lume is your thing, the Mark II Diver will make you happy. Watches that are 43mm and above come on bracelets that usually suffer from cumbersome bracelets. Because of the 22mm lug width these watches often have, their bracelets can add a ton of weight. The Mark II Diver's bracelet is somewhat exempt from that. The bracelet itself is comfortable and has a lot of detail. The bulging center links add some depth to the bracelet and help it look unique. However, the clasp is where the bracelet falls short. I like the addition of the quick adjust clasp, but the clasp was so long that it took up the entire width of the bottom of my wrist. With a smaller clasp, I feel the bracelet would have been even better. This is the second iteration of the Diver from SWC. The Mark I Diver had a square placed in the middle of the dial. It felt like it was trying to be different for the sake of different. This has been changed for the Mark II Diver, and the entire dial is now sunburst. It is simpler and less distracting. The sunburst itself is well executed and adds depth when the light hits it. The ceramic bezel features deep cuts for both the numerals and the lines between them. The texture the bezel adds is excellent. My only complaint about the bezel is that it can be difficult to read in the dark. I wouldn't mind seeing lume added to the first 15 minutes to add some orientation. The bezel itself is torqued just right and is easy to spin despite the scalloped edges. I wouldn't go so far to say that big dive watches are making a comeback. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have their place. Those with larger wrists, or actual divers who want the extra real estate from their watches, may be singing the praises of brands still willing to make them. At just under $500, with impressive specs and a Sellita SW200, it's a hard value proposition to beat. If you've been in the market for a dive watch over 42mm that won't break the bank, the Swiss Watch Company Mark II Diver is your best bet. Thanks for checking out the video review, and for the full written review, head over to watchclicker.com.